Nagenu Rasha. But when a singer is a Rasha, meaning he's singing for the sake of honor, money, women, fame, whatever. Azai hu lokeach hanagina shalom mitzaparim acharot shebeklipa. Oh, where do they get their life force from?
The other side.
They're getting their life force from the birds of the other side in the klipa.
What if they also sing songs of Judaic stuff, like religious stuff?
Even.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't make a difference.
How do I know who's Shomer Rabbi?
You don't. So now we're going to learn that there's a tikkun, that you can protect yourself no matter what you're listening to. And that doesn't mean that you go actively try and look for it. It just means that if you happen to hear it, you're protected. So let's say you pick a religious singer. You don't know. You're protected. Okay. V'chatu b'zohar, like it says in the Zohar. Hatziparim shebaklipa yonkim midadei damalchut. Okay, you ready? Again, deep Kabbalah. This is a very Kabbalistic lesson. The birds of the klipa that are in the klipa, where are they getting their sustenance from? From the breasts of Malchut. Okay. So we should have a question though. We learned that the Sitra Achra gets its sustenance from Netzach and Hod of the other side. Remember that? But Netzach and Hod we learn were the kidneys, or the right? But nowhere do we say the breasts. Okay. So if anybody's seen a cow before, or other types of animals, sometimes they have their udders where their kidneys are. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So for Malchut, of the other side, the breasts are actually down there. They're not up here.
Yeah.
So therefore, where are they getting their life force from? They're getting it from the Malchut of the Sitra Achra. And again, what is Malchut? It is the part of reality which causes influence, either for the good or the other. If it's the Malchut de Kedusha, then it brings you close to Hashem, and it influences you in a positive way. If it's the Malchut de Sitra Achra, it disconnects you from Hashem and affects you in a negative way. So when you listen to a singer who automatically, as long as he is singing, not in order to be closer to Hashem and to bring others closer, which how many people are there like that? Probably not a lot. Then automatically what happens is he is nourishing from the Malchut of the Sitra Achra. And therefore all the music that he creates is also causing others to nourish from that place as well, and therefore to be disconnected from Hashem and not to be unified. V'chan itpaleg leil ya kaden keroza kariz. Now listen to this. In Kabbalah it's explained in nighttime, the klipot are the strongest. Have you ever noticed that your taivas, your desires for food or for sex or for whatever, to go to the club, to go do something that you wouldn't do during the day, becomes more intense at night? Did you ever notice that? Okay. It's crazy, no? Like nighttime comes, and whatever is you're lacking just becomes really strong. Whatever is the thing that like pulls you down, you could be all day, I'm not doing it. All of a sudden nighttime comes and you're like, where's the ice cream in the fridge? You like something just changes because the klipot come out at night. It's a crazy thing, you can feel it. Like in this instantaneously, all of your taivas just heighten and intensify. Your desire to do something that you know is not actually going to be good for you becomes very intense. When is that the case? From the time Tzeit HaKochavim, nighttime comes, until Chatzot, until midnight, halachic midnight. This guy, look at him, see, he stopped, this guy has been listening to like Israeli techno for his whole life, and now for the past week he stopped listening, and look at that smile. He became tan even just through osmosis. He didn't even... It's having such a positive effect on him. So, itpaleg leilya. Listen to what how Hashem does. Why did Hashem create even klipot? Why are there even klipot in the world if all they do is bring people away from Hashem? The answer is to give you bechira, free will. Okay? But the Sitra Achra doesn't like pick and choose, now I want to do good, it's like an animal. It just does what its job is. So what happens if the Jewish people don't know about all of these things, and we're just giving all of our nourishment to the Sitra Achra? We're going to be in exile forever. Right? Because what's Malchut? Malchut is not just in the personal influence, it's also the government. The Malchut of the Sitra Achra is the government of the nations of the world. Meaning, as long as the Malchut Sitra Achra is strong, we're always going to be in exile. The Malchut of Kedusha is the kingdom of Hashem. The Malchut of Hashem. The Malchut of Mashiach. So, what did Hashem do? And this is an amazing thing. He allows the Malchut of the Jewish people, the Emunah, or your positive influence within yourself, to go into exile at nighttime. Why does it do that? Again, to give you free will, but also because what happens is the klipot, they have no limits to their eating, to their nourishing. They want as much as they can get. So wait, take it easy. They want as much as they can get. They're not like, I'm watching my eating now. Whatever shefa they can get from anyone, they are trying to get and feed off. They're like parasites. Okay? So what does Hashem do? He uses that against them. Because what happens is, when midnight comes, and Hashem begins to rectify the Malchut, to lift the Malchut out of the other side, now the klipot are trapped there. Kitziparim achuzot bepach kahem yokshim b'nei adam. There's a pasuk in Kohelet where Shlomo Melech says, as the birds are caught in a trap, so are the children of man ensnared. Meaning like this. By the time Chatzot comes, then Chesed is released into the world. What's causing all the dinim, all the judgments, or all the taivas to intensify and all the negative behaviors to be increased and the ego to go wild at nighttime is all the judgments that are in the world at that time, because that's when the klipot are out. But when midnight strikes, that's the beginning of Chesed re-entering into the world. But the klipot, because they're so busy intensely trying to nourish from the life force of the Jewish people in that period between the beginning of night to midnight, by the time midnight strikes, they didn't protect themselves from that. So now they're actually very vulnerable. And they get struck at midnight. And it says, V'chad itpaleg leilya kedein karoza kariz. The Zohar says every single time midnight comes, if a person's sensitive, they can hear a very intense cry that goes out at midnight. What's the cry coming from? The klipot.
Klipot being destroyed?
The klipot means the forces in reality which are created in order to capture your life force. Why did Hashem create that? To give you free will. Yeah.
If a person has a certain discipline in terms of food, let's just say.
I was just giving one example.
Okay.
Whatever the thing is, it intensifies at night. Everybody's vulnerable at nighttime.
Nothing good ever happens after 12.
I'm talking about halachic night. Halachic night. Everybody's vulnerable at nighttime. Okay? So this is why. This is an interesting thing, by the way. I had a chidush. It used to be that people went to sleep when nighttime came. Automatically, because there's nothing else that you can do, right? What else could you do when nighttime came? They didn't have lights then. So it's a good time to go to sleep, no? You have to get up early in the morning so you can make money, so you can go out to the field and do agriculture, whatever you're doing. It doesn't even make sense to be up then. That's the time to go to sleep. But because of technology, on the outside, on the surface, now we don't have to go to sleep. We don't have to go to sleep now. Now we can stay up 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and we can go to sleep later. I have a sneaking suspicion that what's behind this is actually something deeper. That in fact, the Sitra Achra knows that we're vulnerable at nighttime, and therefore, he prefers that we set up a system with the government, with society, that it's also good to be up at night. You work at night, you go out at night, you do this at night, you do that at night. It's interesting, no? But what happened if you just fell asleep before night came and you woke up at midnight? That's really good. But we can't even do that even if we wanted to. It's interesting, no? So when midnight comes, a cry goes out, the birds are caught in a trap, and the children of man are ensnared. Who are the birds that are caught in the trap? So Rabbi Nachman's teaching us. It's the birds of the Sitra Achra, that when midnight comes, they're trapped. Why? Because chesed is released into the world, meaning mochim, God consciousness is released in the world, and automatically this begins to kill out the Sitra Achra at night. And then it says, so are the children of man ensnared. So what does that mean? So now listen to this. When a person is listening to the music of those people who are called Rasha, which again, what does it mean?
Wicked.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything to us. What does that mean? They are singing for the sake of honor, fame, money, anything besides in order to draw himself and others closer to Hashem. He is called Rasha. Now when he sings, he is drawing nourishment from the birds of the other side. That's where he's getting his music from. Now when you listen to that music, you now are drawing from that same place. So what happens to that person at nighttime, the person who sings? His taivas become very, very intense. Why? Because just like the klipot of the other side are very intense at night, so too, because he's nourishing from them, his desires are also becoming very intense at nighttime. So it's saying the children of man are ensnared, meaning those people who are nourishing from those birds, they also become trapped at nighttime. Not just the klipot. So the more that you are nourishing, not from there, but from the malchut of Kedusha, from holy singers, then when nighttime comes, your taivas don't become as intense. Your vulnerabilities don't become as intense. Why? Because you're not nourishing from the place of the other side. So now the vulnerabilities of nighttime don't affect you as much. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Good. Now he says, and if the singer is a Rasha, then when a person hears him and is attracted by his singing, he too becomes trapped in that snare. Like it's written in the Zohar, so are the children of man ensnared. Okay, this is what we just said. Now listen. And what happened? So that's on a personal level. But what about on a collective level? What's happening when the Jewish people are listening to music of Rashaim? He's so cute. What is happening to the music of people? The Jewish people are listening to the music of Rashaim. So listen, this is a very deep thing. Listen to what the Maya Nachal says. The Maya Nachal is a commentary on... The klipot are very strong right now. The Maya Nachal is a commentary on Likutei Moharan. And he says this is where corrupt kingdoms and governments come from. It comes from us listening to music from people who are nourishing from the Sitra Achra. That's crazy. That's insane. That because, yeah.
Can you repeat that again, please?
Because,
the government?
that why is it that we are in Chutz La'aretz and the authority over us is corrupt governments? And automatically, if it's not a Jewish government, it's a corrupt government. No?
100%.
Okay. So now, why? Because they don't have, their interest is not Hashem. It's like a singer.
Mm-hmm.
Their interest is fame, currency, whatever it is. it's not that that's their fault, but if you don't have Hashem, what else is there to live for beside those things? So you do it. But now it's our responsibility. What do we want the Malchut to come from? Kedusha, meaning Eretz Yisrael, Mashiach, Judaism, Hashem, or do we want it to come from outside governments, which oppress us, which alienates us, which subjugates us? So now we're saying that on a personal level, what happens is that at nighttime comes, your Malchut you're nourishing from, if you listen to that type of music, it's from the other side. And that's why all your vulnerabilities are intensified at night, and then it comes and it hurts you, because it brings you further away from Hashem. But what happens on a global level? It actually gives strength to those governments. Because the Malchut is not just within you, Malchut is actual physical government. What's the government of the other side? Any government that's not a Jewish government. Everybody with me? Does this make sense? So, conversely, now let's look at the opposite though. The Mayan Achal says, what happens when you listen to song that is holy Malchut of Kedusha? Song that is holy, then the Malchut of Kedusha is uplifted and elevated. It's the opposite effect. Now nighttime comes, and you're not vulnerable. You're actually elevated. And then at large, the Mashiach is elevated. His coming is elevated. Hashem, His Malchut is elevated. Thus, King David HaMelech, David, he is the personification of the Malchut of Kedusha. He is the kingship of Kedusha. Why? Because he brings the full revelation of godliness in the world. So what did he do? Was he listening to songs of Rishayim at night? No. He actually rose from sleep to the sound of song. At midnight. At midnight.
Meaning the song that he heard, which was from Kedusha, it aroused him.
Yes. The harp that hung above his bed began playing on its own, and he would awake. In his words, as David HaMelech says, "Awake, my kavod, awake, O harp and lyre," right? These are different musical instruments. "I will awaken the dawn." And he got up specifically at midnight. Why? Because at the time of midnight, this is when chesed begins to reveal itself in the world, when love begins to reveal itself in the world, at midnight. And the whole concept of David HaMelech, the Mashiach, is that his Torah is a Torah of love. For that reason, he sleeps at night, but he wakes up at midnight. Meaning Mashiach also comes at midnight. Chatzot. That's why the Zohar says it's such a big thing, Tikkun Chatzot, that it brings the redemption very close. And as that he is the personification of the Malchut of Kedusha, meaning, what is Malchut again? It's an influence. What's the Malchut of Kedusha? It is the highest, most elevated influence that allows you to be closer to Hashem and to be closer to the good that's in this world. That's personified by David. And after praying, when he woke up, he would spend the rest of the night in study, because nighttime study corresponds to rectified song.
Is that again nighttime study?
Yes, meaning how do we rectify? What's the tikkun we're going to learn? It has to do with learning at night. Because learning is actually the concept of a holy song. And when you learn at night, you're rectifying the song of the other side. You're taking from the song of Kedusha. Now what happens to your Malchut? The influence inside of you, whether it brings you closer or further away from Hashem, brings you closer to Hashem.
Bug out.
That's why David HaMelech says specifically, at midnight I will rise. Why specifically midnight? Because we know that Malchut, Emunah, David corresponds to the night. Why not another hour of the night? Because the Zohar says that at midnight, that is when the judgment, the dinim, are stymied. They are stayed. I don't know what simple word. They are suppressed. Very good. They are suppressed at midnight, and chesed begins to reveal itself in the world. Elsewhere, the Zohar teaches that the entrapment and defeat of the klipot at midnight, how do we do that? is primarily on account of those who rise and study Torah at that time. Why? Because it's the opposite. Those people who are out at the club listening to that music, so what are they doing? They're feeding and they are nourishing from the music that is getting its life force from Netzach and Hod of the other side. Right? But what happens when a Jew at the same time is in his house alone learning Torah? Torah is also a song, but it's a holy song. So when you say it out loud at midnight, you're actually rectifying it. That's the tikkun.
So would it be better to do Hibud to do it at nighttime since his chesed is coming in? Yeah. Right?
So Rabbi Nachman says the best time to do it is at nighttime.
Not in the morning.
But the nighttime he's referring to is like night about to be morning. Before Lot HaShachar. Before Nates. Like the hardcore breast lovers, they go to sleep early, or they don't because they're like living in like a very high state of spirituality, and they get up like at 4 a.m. They go do their hibodedut do it, and then they pray Shachar.
So they do it before so they can do the Hnetz.
They do it before so they can mekayim like the most optimal way to do hibodedut. But obviously, if you wake up at 4 a.m. and you're dead, that's not what Rabbi Nachman wants.
Right.
The main thing is that you're awake and that you can feel connected. They're able to because they're so connected to Rav Nachman that they realize that everything that he says only brings good. So they build their whole life according to the Torah that he teaches. Now they're able to get to sleep earlier and get up earlier. And they literally, like I build my day around my hibodedut because I understand it's the most important thing, right? If you don't realize it's the most important thing, hibodedut is going to come last for you, right? If I have time.
Up until what time is we talk about the chesed comes down? Until next time, until the Shachar?
No, for the whole day, it continues to come down during the daytime.
So from midnight?
Throughout the daytime, it's coming up more and more. But the main thing is midnight. Why? Because that's when the klipot are the most vulnerable, because they've been sustaining from Shefa at that time, so they're literally like, because they're all just stuffing their face with Jewish neshama life force, so they're all waiting there, and if you can get them right there, you can just slay them by learning Torah at night. Yeah, it's specifically from Chatzot on. Learning Torah. That's the best time.
What type of Torah?
We're going to learn. It's going to come up right now. Okay? Now, v'atikun. You ask, what's the tikkun? Ready? Hu she'ochel lishmea negina mikol adam. That you're able to listen to music from anyone. And again, that doesn't mean that you actively search out music from Rashayim. If you happen to hear it, you won't be affected at all. If you do, Rabbi Nachman's tikkun right now. Which, it's not Rabbi Nachman's tikkun, it's from the Zohar, he's just bringing it down. This is the tikkun. Hu al yedei shilmad balayla Torah shebal peh. By learning at night Torah of the oral Torah.
Like the Gemara?
Ainu Gemara, meaning the Gemara. Shehi bechinat laila, because the Gemara is called nighttime.
Oh my God, I just hopped all this time and didn't get it until now.
Yeah, you can't get this Torah until you get to this point. You're like, even in the beginning when I'm reviewing this, I'm like, this is so hard.
Because Gemara we learn is night.
Yeah.
Wow.
Gemara is called David HaMelech. It's the Malchut of Kedusha.
Because it deals with machloikes, bilbulim, and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, you're going to see.
Wow.
It's better to understand it at that time because there's chesed coming down, wisdom comes down, and you're able to understand.
Because what's happening is you're dealing with holy machloket, and now chesed, meaning understanding, comes at that time exactly, and now you're able to resolve machloket. It's a very deep thing. It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's a very deep thing. We're gonna just keep listening. If you didn't understand yet, it's okay. It's Shina Gemara Bechinat Laila Kideita Bid Midrash, because it's brought in the Midrash Shochar Tov. This is the Midrash on Tehillim. Kishaya Moshe Bahar Arbayim Yom Arbayim Laila. Like when Moshe was on Har Sinai, right? Today we just had the fast because he broke the tablets for 40 days and 40 nights. Lo haya yodea matai yom u'matai laila. He couldn't have known when it was day or night. Rak, however, only al yadeh Rak al yadeh zeh keshaya lomed Torah shebichtav. However, only that because he was learning Torah shebichtav, meaning the written Torah, Chumash, haya yodeu hu yom. He knew it was daytime. U'shelamad Torah shebal peh, and when Hashem was teaching him Torah shebal peh, the oral Torah, haya yodeh shehu laila, he knew it was nighttime. Nimsa, listen to this. Consequently, as a result, shet Torah shebal peh hi bechinat laila. It's not just he knew it was nighttime because he was learning the oral Torah, it's that the oral Torah is nighttime. It's called nighttime. Like it says in Yirmiyahu. Who is Yirmiyahu? He was a prophet. We're learning the prophets, right? What type of prophet was Yirmiyahu? Yirmiyahu had the most difficult task, maybe, of any human being that ever lived. The most unenviable task. What was Yirmiyahu's whole job? He was to be the Navi at the time of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Meaning, all he had his whole life was to give bad news to the Jewish people.
That's bugged out.
And since he was a little boy, he was upset at Hashem that he made him this person who would have to do this. Because for a prophet, they love the Jewish people. Can you imagine telling your family every day just terrible news? He couldn't take it, it was killing him. Yirmiyahu. So he was the prophet at the time of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. And all he was doing was seemingly giving bad news. And then the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. So listen to what he says.
But the bad news was actually
Good news. So listen, that's exactly what he's going to say. But enclosed in his bad prophecy about what would be is actually the tikkun for the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, which is very kedai for right now. And that is, b'machshakim hushivani. That Yirmiyahu says, he seated me in dark places. So the Gemara says in Masechet Sanhedrin, what are these dark places that Yirmiyahu is talking about? Zeh Talmud Bavli. The Gemara, specifically Bavli.
Because Bavel was connected darkness?
Because Bavel is connected exile, because of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, right? So where do we go to? We went to Bavel. But on top of that, it's even more than that. There's two Gemaras. There's two Talmuds. One of them comes from Bavli, from Bavel. One of them is from Yerushalayim. There's two. Rabbi Nachman says you should be learning both of them, okay? But before we get there, why is it that the majority of people read Bavli? Why don't we read the Yerushalmi?
Because we are in exile.
So listen. Because the tikkun for exile is the Torah that comes from exile. Because if you, why? Because when you learn the Yerushalmi, you'll see that they're like best friends. They agree on everything. But in the Bavli, in Bavel, they're arguing on every single point. When we think of Gemara, all we think of is this guy says this thing, this guy says this thing, this. The Yerushalmi is not like that at all. Because they're not in exile. Because machloket is a function of exile. You can't have machloket when you're living in the space of the land of Israel. So in the Yerushalmi, there's not machloket like it is in the Bavli. That's why we learn the Bavli. Because we're rectifying machloket, dispute, lack of unity from the Sitra Achra by learning the most kodesh form, which is from the holiest rabbis, that they're arguing over the truth. Do you understand that? No. Okay. That how do we rectify machloket? Because machloket is exile. The fact that we don't agree on anything, that's a function of the exile. Why don't we all agree? We should all agree. We're all Jewish souls. We're all part of one soul. Why don't we all see the truth in the same place? Because we're in exile. Because geula means unity. Exile means disunity. How do we rectify that? The answer is by learning about arguments
For the sake of peace.
for the sake of peace.
What halakha?
Yes, exactly, like halakha. We're going to get there in a second. We're going to see that in some ways halakha might be even better than Gemara learning, because halakha takes it all the way to the point of psak. Meaning it takes the machloket of kedusha and brings it to a final result. And when you learn that, then you rectify the night. And this is why Rabbi Nachman, before he passed away, he left a will. And one thing that he said there, every Jew needs to learn halakha every single day. Doesn't mean that you need to be busy learning it all day and night. It means you need to learn one pasak a day, that I know one more pasak. I know one more Jewish law. What's the reason? It's not just to know what Hashem wants you to do. It's a very, very deep tikkun.
Yeah.
And this is why Breslovers are busy learning halacha all the time.
Is that called taking your Torah and turning it into tefillah? That specific halacha?
Meaning because you brought it to an actuality? Yeah.
I'm sorry, you guys don't look halakha, or we just follow up?
No. He says that you should learn the Shulchan Aruch. He says you should learn the Shulchan Aruch every single day. It's the most perfect thing. It was written with Ruach HaKodesh. You don't even need to make a chidush in it. You just need to learn it. It's perfect.
But he has chok. For chok is the same thing we have chok. He has the same thing that a daily learning.
He's saying like does Rav Nachman give us...
So he has a very unique prescription for learning that nobody else has, which most of the Jewish world like scoffs at because they think it's ridiculous. But the people who are connected to Rabbi Nachman understand where it's coming from, and therefore they believe in it very much. They've created, so to speak, their own Chok Yisrael. However, it's in Hebrew. So if you don't know Hebrew, it's difficult to do. I don't know that David Elias knows it.
They have on the web a translated one every day.
Ah, they do?
On the breast of
Ah, okay, so it's there. But, okay, we'll get there in a second. But like this. The Pasuk says in Bereshit, V'lachoshech kara laila, and to darkness he called it night. Right? So he says, to or kara boker. He called the light daytime, and he called the night laila. So listen to what he says. Hayenu ayodeh shilmad shas, by learning shas, meaning Mishnayot, the Gemara, right? The 6 orders of the Mishnah is called shas. What are the 6 orders? Anybody know? Zroim, which is the laws of agriculture, and tefillah, which is interesting how they're together. Then you have Moed, which is the laws of Shabbat and the holidays. You have Nashim, which is the laws of marriage and divorce. You have Nazikin, which is the civil and criminal laws. You have Kodshim, which is the laws of the Beit HaMikdash. And then you have Tahara and Tuma, right? The laws of purity and impurity. Those are the 6 orders of the Mishnah. Those are the Mishnayot. That's why Breslovers all learn Mishnayot, okay? And because it's brought down by the Arizal. Now, what is the Gemara? The Gemara is taking those 6 and bringing clarity to and sources for where the Mishnayot got those laws from.
Is it connected to 6 days?
Yes, and it's connected.
6 days is called darkness, Shabbos is called light, meaning like Olam Haba.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or is that a chiddush?
That's a chiddush, but it's good. It's a chiddush, but it's good.
I like chiddushim, helps me with my thoughts.
Yes. So now what he says though, you said like this, study Mishnah and Gemara together is even better than just starting the Mishnah. Why? Because what you're doing is a process of rectifying the exile. You're taking a law that comes from the exile and you're clarifying it and you're crystallizing it.
So like the Gemara, the Mishnah is on top of the Gemara?
Yeah, you have the Mishnah, but you don't understand where the Mishnah comes from or how it applies to your life. Now you learn the Gemara, you begin to understand the source for the Mishnah, for the Jewish law, and to argue and to figure out how it applies in your life, but still you don't know by the end of learning the Gemara. But now the Bir Likutim says that's why the main areas of study in our generation is Shulchan Aruch and Kabbalah. Shulchan Aruch and Kabbalah. This is why the Sephardim are busy with these two things. The Sephardim are busy with learning Halakha and Kabbalah, and the Hasidim the same.
And Ashkenaz is not?
Not as much. Because they're not applying Kabbalah. Whereas the Sephardim and the Hasidim are applying Kabbalah. So what do the Sephardim and the Hasidim know? That by learning Shulchan Aruch, Halakha, and Kabbalah, they are coming to final psak, and therefore they're clarifying and they're rectifying the exile, or the blemished voice that got lost in the Sitra Achra.
Maybe halacha is the people who are speaking, they're singing back to back with each other, and they're trying to come to a conclusion.
That is what it is.
Yes.
That is what it is. And now, listen to what the Mishnah Berurah says, because the Mishnah Berurah, right, was written by the Chavetz Chaim, and many people don't know this. He was a gigantic Mekubal. He was a very, very big Kabbalist. And the Chavetz Chaim says in the Mishnah Berurah, Mishnah should be the primary area of study, meaning Mishnah Gemara. And if one has merited insight into the Kabbalah, then the best time for the study is right after midnight. Makes sense, right? This is what we just learned. Well, because of what we just learned.
Is it written in there what you just said, or you just said?
No, this is what the Mishnah Berurah says. In English, I told you what it says in English. It's not part of Likutei Moharan. I'm explaining what the Mishnah Berurah says. You should be learning Mishnah, meaning Gemara, meaning Halacha, meaning how do I apply, and also Kabbalah. So you see, it's very clear. It's in Halacha at this point. This is what we should be doing now. Why? Because everybody who knows Kabbalah understands that this is the Tikkun. When's the best time to do this? Midnight.
So why don't we move the classes to 12 o'clock?
I have a dream, mamish, that we move to Israel, and we like have our own society, and we literally make it so we wake up earlier, like much earlier, and we go to sleep like at 6 o'clock. We wake up at 12, and we can do all the tikkunim. By the way, you should know that there are many people in Israel who already do this. I've already seen when I was with my family and like whatever, the Sephardim and the Hasidim, they make it so that they're scheduled because they're not bound by the laws of society in exile. They just do like what Hashem says is the best thing to do for the world, and they'll have like these nighttime Kabbalah seders and Halacha seders. Okay, something to pray for. We'll finish this part here, and then we'll end the week. Why, when you learn Shas, what happens? What happens when you learn the 6 orders of the Mishnah, when you learn the Gemara?
Your brain starts working.
Yitaken hashit izkain shebakaneh. Because Rabbi Nachman explains, listen to this. You have 6 rings in your windpipe. In your windpipe, where your voice comes out of, you have 6 rings.
And you knew this how?
From the Zohar. So the Zohar says, why do you have 6 rings? Keneged the 6 Sfirot. What happened that we're in exile? Voice went into exile. It's nourishing from the other side. So how do we rectify that? Holy voice, holy song. What's holy song? Learning oral Torah at night. When you learn oral Torah at night, that's why it's 6 Sadarim. That's why it's the 6 Keneged, the 6 rings of your windpipe, meaning you rectify your whole voice. And now what comes out is holy speech, and that's redemption. It's speech that's heard. Everybody understand the connection between everything we've done since the beginning of the lesson?
Right, because before the light, before revelation, has to come the darkness.
Right, but we can do the good darkness,
Right.
which is called David, which is called the oral Torah.
And when you do that, you have the revelation of Hashem in the morning.
Yes, exactly. Good.
When you say redemption, does it mean you personal redemption?
Yeah.
Or for the whole?
And then the whole.
So you personal redemption meaning?
Your personal redemption brings the collective redemption closer.
So am I part of the exile?
Yes.
Or I'm still part of the exile?
You're both. As long as you're part of the Jewish people, you're part of whatever's going on. If we're in exile, you're part of the exile. If we have Geula, you're part of the Geula. We're one soul. That's why when you think, Hu nebach me, I'm just I'm like a nobody living in Queens, and like I'm doing this. Who cares what I do at night? I'm gonna go eat like a tank of ice cream like at night after I leave this class. Who's gonna care? A tank, whatever, like a whole thing. Or let's say like I go like masturbate, chas v'shalom. Or let's say I go like listen to music from. So you think to yourself, who cares what I'm doing? I'm just like a nobody. No, you're not a nobody. You're part of Am HaKodesh. You're part of the Shekhinah. Whatever each of us does affects the Jewish people tremendously. Rabbi Nachman says if you take any step in the area of Kedusha, the whole Jewish people rises with you, without them even knowing it. It's an unbelievable thing. It's so empowering. If you go home right now, and instead of eating 3 slices of pizza, you eat 2, the whole entire Jewish people elevates spiritually. So have that. By the way, this helped me tremendously in a lot of my difficulties and challenges. I thought to myself, yeah, for me, who cares about me? But if what I'm doing affects all my brothers and sisters, and I can help them, and that's my dream, I can do it, and I don't even need to be doing anything with anybody else. I could just work on myself. And it gives you a lot of motivation. It gives you a lot of chiyut, a lot of strength. Okay, so let's just finish this. Listen to this. This is why the pasuk says, I know it's a little bit late, but I just want to finish the section. Is that okay with everybody? Mm-hmm. No?
We have nowhere to be, it's okay.
I like how he extrapolated his own situation to everybody else. Okay. We have absolutely nowhere to be and nothing to do. Kumi roni belayla. Listen to the pasuk. Listen to what Rabbi Nachman does. This is the genius of Rabbi Nachman. Kumi roni belayla. The pasuk says, Yirmiyahu says, rise, sing out in the nighttime. So now Rabbi Nachman, what does he say that pasuk really means? Hayenu shetihei tekuma larina. Meaning, how is roni, song, kumi, risen up? How do we rectify song? V'layla. With the concept of nighttime. Hayenu ayadei layla shehina begamara shas. Does everybody understand what he does? The pasuk says, kumi, arise, roni, my song in the nighttime. He's saying it's a formula for rectifying the exile of the Jewish people. Kumi roni, my song, meaning why are we in exile? Because song is in exile. Kumi, how do we get it to arise, to elevate from the Sitra Achra? Through Laila, the Malchut of Kedusha, the Gemara, King David, Shas.
And what about Tehillim?
That's not what we're saying right now. That's not what we're saying right now. Okay, now let's finish this last part and we're done. Listen to this. Ach, kishelomed shelo lishma. Shh, Benny. Ach, we're almost done. Kishelomed shelo lishma. However, when a person learns not lishma, he is not learning to get closer to Hashem, which means he's learning in order to bring it into his life so that he can actualize what he learns. Hayenu bishvil ikare Rabbi. Rather, he's learning in order to be called Rabbi. What does that mean? I'm learning to be called Rabbi. Meaning I'm learning for self-aggrandizement. I'm learning in order to further myself. There's 2 ways to do anything. You can do it in order to connect to something that's greater than you, or you can do it in order to strengthen yourself. When you do it for something that's greater than you, that is called Geula. When you do something in order to further yourself, that's called galut. It's called exile. What's this whole thing with learning lishma, to learn for learning itself? It means simply when I'm learning in order to connect to something that's greater than me. If that's the motivation for learning. When I learn Rabbi Nachman's Torah, when I learn the Gemara, when I learn Halacha, when I learn anything, why am I learning? If I'm learning in order to receive from something greater than me, whether it's the tzaddik that's teaching me or it's from Hashem, in order to get closer to that thing that's greater than me, that's called learning lishma. A person, he's not learning for that reason, but he's learning for the sake of honor. He's learning for the sake of being called an authority, a rabbi. He's learning for the sake of ego. He's learning for self. Halimud einu b'chashivut kolkach. Then his learning is not all that chashivut. It's not really so gewaldig. Yeah. U'shelamod b'layla, however, when he learns with the night, meaning he's learning lishma. Because when a person learns at nighttime, who wants to learn at nighttime?
No.
Nobody. Why? Because that's when the ego is strong, because the klipot are out then. During the day, your ego is lessened. Why? Because the klipot are not out then. But at nighttime, when the klipot come out, now what's affected? Your ego. It's strengthened. That's why all your taivas go up. And that's why you don't want to do anything for anybody else at nighttime besides yourself. You think it's because I had a rough day at work. I'm tired now. No. It's because the klipot are out now, and now you're concerned with self. So how do we fix that? How do we fix that? By learning at nighttime, when nobody sees you, when you have no reason to be learning for yourself, but you're doing it anyway. That's called learning lishma. And then what happens is you're protected from the sitra achra at night, because that's the holy song. And then you have a chut shel chesed during the day. Nimshach alav u'magen alav shelo yazik lo b'machshava. Then during the day, you're protected from any negativity as well. And specifically, what's the primary force of negativity in your own personal life? Your own thoughts of self. So by learning Torah at night, which you don't want to do, and you do it anyway, and you're learning when people can't see you, so you have no other reason to learn at that time except to be close to Hashem, then what happens during the daytime is whatever you're doing, you're protected from thoughts of ego. Because that is the sitra achra. This is the end of the section. This is not the end of the lesson. This is the end of the section. Any questions before we end up?
So what happens if a person has ego and he's learning with
For himself.
but for other, just to get kavod? So what happens when he's learning at nighttime? Does he get the positive or the negative of it?
He becomes part of receiving from the birds of the other side.
So he's still getting, is it as equal? Because
No, so listen, so this is a good question. There's two main perspectives in the Gemara about learning lo lishma. That I'm learning not for Hashem, I'm not learning in order to receive from something greater than me, I'm learning for myself. The famous one that most people know is, you should learn lo lishma, meaning I'm learning for myself so that I could eventually learn lishma. Meaning there's a power of learning Torah that even if I'm learning for myself, that by learning the Torah itself, it brings me to humility. Okay? So this is why all rabbis say, they don't make a point of where are you holding now with your ego before you start learning. They say just learn. Why? Because by learning Torah, it's going to bring you to the breaking of the ego. Why? Because you're learning about Hashem. This nullifies the ego, because it's greater than you. Okay? However, it says elsewhere in the Gemara that a person who learns Lo lishma, meaning for himself, it's better that he should have never been born. Okay? So now, how do we put these two things together? This is a big discrepancy. So the answer is like this. There is 3 levels of doing a mitzvah. You do a mitzvah for the sake of a mitzvah. That's the highest level. Then there is, I'm doing the mitzvah, or let's say for instance like this. There's 3 levels of learning. I'm learning in order to be connected and to receive something which is greater than me. Lishma. Not for my sake, but for something besides myself. Higher than myself. This is called lishma. This is the highest level of learning. Okay? To get me closer to Hashem. Okay. And to bring others closer. Whatever it is. But it's not about me. Okay? It's not about myself. It's about me. It's about my soul, but it's not about myself. Not about my ego. When I'm not learning for the sake of my ego, that's called lishma. It's the highest level of learning. And it says in many, many different places, the amount of benefits that happen to you physically and spiritually by doing this is not something that you can even write down in a book that's explainable. Okay? This is the highest level. What's the lowest level of learning? I'm learning in order to prove that it's not true. Now you're going to say, who would ever do that? People do that. I was in Uman, listen to this, and I wrote something down when I taught this lesson a couple of years ago to you guys, and I wrote a note there, and then I went to Uman this past year, and when I was reviewing, like, oh my gosh, listen to how deep this is. This is like the personal example that's going to like just clarify everything. This guy in Uman was staying at our hotel, okay? He came up to me, and he looked very troubled. He looked very troubled. And he started speaking to me about Torah. And he was literally saying the entire Gemara to me, Bal Peh. He was referencing every single thing from the oral Torah, Bal Peh, in a not normal way, even in a way I haven't seen rabbis do. He wasn't wearing a kippah. He was not holding at all. And this guy knew Gemara by heart, Bal Peh. Everything, the machloket, what the opinions of Rash, like it was not normal. He was a young guy. And he told us, I wrote a whole book about what is the ikar mitzvah of the whole Torah. Super chill. What does that mean? He said, I narrowed down what the whole point of the Torah. It's not the mitzvot. It's not anything except this state called super chill.
Super chill?
What? That every Jewish person should be in a state called super chill.
What are you saying? You're making like a sound. Very quiet.
Super chill.
Super chill?
Yeah. I'm in a state of super chill.
The Parshat shot.
Yes. And he brings Gemaras to prove it. and he's listening to the whole thing about Peh. So I was listening to him speak, and I was so fascinated by him. And I said to him, do you think there's anybody in the world that's like you? He said, what do you mean? That somebody knows as much Torah as you know and doesn't believe the Torah is true. Because I was just fascinated. I wasn't judging him. I was like fascinated by him. That he could know the whole Torah by heart and hold that it's not true and continue to learn it, like at a high level. So he laughed and he told me, my rabbi told me, that I'm like Acher. You know what Acher is?
Yeah, the other one.
There was one rabbi who was one of the 4 people who went to Pardes. Yeah? And he came back not so super chill, okay? But Acher, listen to what the Gemara says. I wrote this down in a note, I guess when I was preparing a few years ago. It says in the Gemara in Chagiga, what happened to Acher? Why did Acher, it's a shame Benny's missing this because he would love this. Why did Acher, how could he learn so much Torah and not believe in Hashem? How did he know everything by heart and not believe in Hashem? Benny! Stop! It's so loud. It's too loud. No, I'm just. You can.
But But he actually believed in one point.
He did. He believed very much. He could have been the greatest tzaddik of the whole generation.
But he heard a voice.
Yeah, he was
in
excommunicated. So listen.
He heard a voice in heaven.
Wait, listen to what Acher was doing. The Gemara in Chagiga said that while he was in yeshiva, when the Greeks came, he was fascinated by the Greeks. And they always found him singing Greek songs. Unbelievable, no?
Next level.
Singing Greek songs and reading Greek wisdom, secular wisdom. And the Gemara says this is the reason why he lost everything. That a person could be learning and literally know everything, and yet it brings him further away from Hashem than if he never learned. Why? Because he was listening to secular music and listening and learning secular wisdom.
But wasn't he well versed enough to defend against that?
Yes. But he's wrong. That's the whole point. He's wrong. How can you know all of that and come to the wrong conclusion? And the answer is because he was a rap artist. A rap artist. That was the whole point of the story in the end. He listens to rap music all day and night, and he is a rapper. He's a white Jewish rapper.
He's not like Nissan Black, right?
No, he's not like Nissim Black. He's rapping like anybody you see in music. And he probably doesn't even realize the whole reason he doesn't believe is because he's a rapper listening to rap music, even though he's learning all that Torah. And it's explicit in this Torah why it's happening. He knows the whole Torah Baal Peh, but because he's listening to rap music, he is nourished from the Sitra Achra. He's literally like Acher. Whatever it is, but I had so much rachamim for him, so much empathy for him. I wanted him to connect to him and to talk to him. I ended up spending time. We went to visit graves. The nicest guy. Deeply troubled soul, has been, I'm sure, through tremendous abuse and trauma in his life. But regardless, it's literally this Torah in Revelation. And when I was reading today, at the end of the fast, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Acher. It's literally Acher.
How can a person have this kind of knowledge if he's learning the wrong way? People that are learning Lishma, they don't have that kind of wisdom and the remembrance that these kind of people learn for the wrong reasons. How can Hashem give him this?
Okay, so how was Bilam the equal to Moshe Rabbeinu of the non-Jews?
Is Hashem giving him a certain talent he's born with? So basically all these people that are learning, they have this talent.
Yes.
Okay, so they have this talent, so they're just using it the wrong way.
Yes.
Hashem gave him this talent, they have to choose the right and the wrong.
Yes.
Okay.
He has a natural gift. He really knows to learn, in a way I've never seen before.
So if a person's learning the Shema, can he take from his wisdom and bring it to his wisdom in terms of remembering things?
Yes.
So if he's not using his wisdom the right way, can Hashem take that wisdom away and give it to the other person who's learning?
Hashem can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, okay.
Hashem
Can
can
we
do.
pray for that?
Yes.
Can we say that people that are using their wisdom the wrong way, can I get their wisdom?
If that finds its way into your Arab Hibodadu, so you can pray for whatever you want. I have more things that are going on in my mind, but if you
I can't remember things. I can't put them together, stuff like that. So I'm thinking maybe.
Okay, so it's a good thing to pray, Hashem, help me to remember my Torah. Part of a really good way to remember what you learn is to pray out what you learn, which is what Rabbi Nachman says to do. Take what you learned and turn it into a tefillah. If you do that, you're going to remember the Torah that you learned.
I just read that from that book.
Yeah.
It was bugging out.
Any other questions? You got a question?
Yeah, why did the book come out at night?
Why what?
Why did the book
Come out at night to give us bechira, so that we can have free will. Because if we didn't have the klipot, if there was no sitra achra, you would have no bechira.
still have free will during the day?
No. Yeah. What do you mean you still have free will during the day? Yeah, because the effects are still there. As long as you're still doing something for the sake of yourself, you're connected to the other side.
There's no klipot during the day.
So the klipot are not as strong during the daytime, but the klipot are there. They're just really, really strong at night. And the beginning of their nullification comes at midnight.
So is there a reason for why it's specifically strong
Yes, because nighttime is the concept of exile. The reason why it's physically dark is because spiritually it's dark. The reason why it's physically light is because spiritually it's light, meaning that God consciousness is revealed during the day and it's hidden at night. Also, day and nighttime is Keneged Geula and Galut, it's Keneged redemption and exile. So the nighttime is the concept of exile personified. So what's the exile? Is that you are not yourself. You're in exile. There's a lot more to be said, but exactly. To protect us from all of these things. Exactly. Okay, thank you guys. Everybody have an amazing